All right. Well, hopefully folks got to know who we are in the panel. If you missed the panel, Kata, you want to briefly introduce yourself again?
Yeah, so in case you missed it, so my name is Kata Nyitrai, and I'm tuning in now from south of France. Actually, I'm working at Meero, which is a French startup, and I'm leading globally the business development department.
Awesome. And I'm Jeremey Donovan. I'm head of sales strategy and operations at Salesloft. I guess my bona fides on the SDR world is I've started a number of sales development organizations and also ran the sales dev organization at Salesloft for about a little while. So we got a few topics to seed the discussion, but if anybody wants to ask a question, go ahead and ask that in the chat window there. Or you can even feel free, if you're brave, and to click that participate button in the upper right and just jump in with a question. But Kata and I were talking a little bit yesterday as we were prepping for this, and kind of one of the first topics we had come up with is, to what extent people have had to change, SDRs have had to change their messaging. And in fact, the question that just got asked in the chat is exactly the question. So that's perfect. Thanks, Will. So Kata, are you mentioning COVID or coronavirus in your emails and phone calls and your cold outreach?
Yes. So basically, we do. The reason why is that personally, like I'm getting a lot of cold outreach as well on LinkedIn, on email, and so on. And actually, I see it from a lot of salespeople that they don't really adapt, and they just sending their standardized email and templates, and which is not actually, like 80% of the time, it's not even personalized. And honestly, sometimes even I get annoyed, and actually I should be I should be really more empathetic towards the salespeople, because I'm leading a bunch of them. But I think it's really important to anticipate it, because right now we don't know, whether these people actually that we're targeting, they still have security in their job, whether actually they have some problems in their family and they've been impacted by it. And I think we definitely have to swift from this general sales pitch. It doesn't make sense anymore. And I think what we also discussed is that personalization is I think I was always the biggest advocate of personalization. So I think it's definitely very important, and it's not just because of the COVID, but now it's really the time to stand out, and at least just to be human.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think it's really, really important, especially what I see in the cold outreach when it's a cold call. That I think sometimes my BDRs were struggling with this as well, is that obviously you want to mention it because you want to be you want to anticipate it, but on the other hand, sometimes it's a little bit awkward in the beginning, and sometimes you just directly start talking about the COVID, and you don't really give any context. So in certain regions, actually, because we're covering quite all around the world, for instance, in Middle East, it's really weird if you start talking about people's family directly, and they don't know you. It's different if you just send like a nice message to some people or some prospects that you've been already in touch with. But if it's a real cold outreach at the first time, you really have to find this nice balance that you have to anticipate it, but on the other hand, you cannot really come across too awkward that you just a random person who calls up and like, how are you doing? How's your family?
Different culturally. Yeah. In the US, you can sort of jump in a little more. I just added a note into the chat there with some great tips on personalization that I learned from Beck Holland, who's over at Chorus. If you're not following Beck, you got to follow Beck. Her content is amazing. We did a few tests on the references to coronavirus. One was, we're able to look at the millions of emails that are flowing through the system, and we found that there's something like I think it's a 40-ish% drop in reply rate if you put coronavirus or COVID in the subject line. So you definitely want to avoid that in the subject line. I think the most common thing, it's almost become, the norm is to say something like, hope you're staying healthy and sane. Like that seems to be the sort of fast, efficient way of acknowledging the elephant in the room. The other piece is we did a test internally, just where we called people and we either referenced coronavirus up front, like with that staying sane and healthy, or we didn't reference it. And then we varied the sort of body of the way we were engaging people value prop wise to either reference or not reference COVID. And what we found was the best way was to do that sort of quick, acknowledge the elephant in the room when you call people on the cold call, hope you're staying healthy and sane, and then move into just like a relevant, a value prop that's relevant right now. You know, like everybody's product can be positioned to be a must-have, a need-to-have, during this time. There was another question that came through in there from Jason. He said, what are the key metrics that you're holding your SDRs to, and have things changed? Curious for you, Kata, how you've adjusted, if anything, your KPIs.
Yeah, we did, because actually before we only had, so we bait the commission system and also the main KPIs on opportunities and VP calls. So that means that actually when the opportunity went into a late stage and we already actually submitted the pricing. So this is how like they were actually incentivized based on a point system. And for now, obviously, like during these times, they don't really have so much visibility and power, whether actually these meetings can really move into an opportunity stage. So actually we created now a discovery call field as well in Salesforce, and we're tracking that as well on a daily level. And that's one of the key metrics, just to see, whether, because right now, like, the fact that maybe they don't manage to get a meeting which turns into an opportunity, again, it's out of their hands. But we can still see how well they perform and how much effort they put in. If we see that they're engaging with people and actually they manage to get interest, they manage to get some information which can help to further qualify the lead. And so I think that's one of the really important things to try to track what can be tracked at this time.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't not changed our KPIs. Just like you, we pay on opportunities sourced, and for us, that's basically the meeting with the AE was held, and the AE at the end of the meeting marked that as qualified. That's what we pay on. We call them sales developing opportunities, but people call them SALs or SQLs. There's all kinds of different things, but I always like to describe it as meeting held and marked as qualified at that stage. It does vary so much on industry. I mean, I was mentioning earlier, I talked to this guy who sells into the hotel and hospitality industry, and they're like, it's like a near standstill. In other places, you've seen reports of like, up top of the funnel in some industries is relatively healthy. It's the later stage stuff where stuff is getting stuck. So it just depends so much on what industry you're selling into. There's another question that I guess got seconded down in the chat there, which is, I've heard advice floated that sales engagement should be focused on understanding the customers, like their challenges, and provide value. So basically, I guess I'm reading that as just like understand, empathize, build the relationship, so that late on down the road you weren't a jerk, I guess, right? Is that you were really being empathetic to them. Since you're selling to into a challenged industry, where have you struck the balance?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because for instance, like that's what I mentioned before, that one of our key industry is travel. And obviously, like they are right now undergoing some serious issues. Some companies actually like shutting down, or fully stop operation, or just partially. So I think it's definitely good to engage. So I would come back to this topic that I think it's a good time to create this big pool of companies as a backlog, and to try to qualify them, and try to get as many information as possible. Try to make create a relationship with champions, and to have the possibility to go back to it when the time is right. But in general, I mean, there is. I mean, it's the reality that there is a point where we cannot push anymore. So if there are really challenged industries that that really undergoing some serious issues that we cannot really force ourselves on them because it's just gonna create an unhealthy relationship.
Yeah. I think you covered that. I can have nothing to add. That's perfect. The other question, one other question that's come through is kind of whether or not, I mean, reps were already using LinkedIn to in their prospecting. It's to what extent have you changed your LinkedIn approach? Maybe I'll start with the answer to that one is I mean I think of LinkedIn as just another medium and not that's very sort of email like. But if anything, obviously shorter. But the personalization is so incredibly relevant. And if you're on LinkedIn, like you have zero excuse to not personalize because you're on LinkedIn and you can see all this stuff that is great fodder for personalization. The other LinkedIn tip I would give you is I think anything novel tends to get response. So you can, depending, you may need to be connected with people, but to do this, but like once you connect, you can leave a voicemail or a video voicemail for people, and
Exactly.
very few SDRs take advantage of that. And I will tell you, like, I respond to almost 100% of LinkedIn voicemails or LinkedIn video voicemails because it's sort of novel, and I feel like if they took the time to sort of say something relevant to me, then I'll at least acknowledge it. I may not take a meeting; it just depends, but I'll at least acknowledge it.
Yeah, and actually, I just got to know about this. I think like a couple of weeks ago as well. That I didn't know that it's possible actually on LinkedIn, and now we're starting doing that as well. But again, it's what you're saying. It's really right that in a way, like if once you're noble, and then if it shows on your outreach that actually you put time in it and effort, and this is really the only way to stand out because personally as well, like if someone reaches out to me and try to engage with me with some personal reflections on like one of my posts or like just anything that maybe they managed to get to know about me, I would just answer them because I appreciate it. And I would feel honestly bad not to answer because I know that they put the effort in it, and at least it's not just a random mess mailing. So this is something that we already mentioned in the other panel as well. That for instance, videos, they also like a very great tool that you can try out during these times. And honestly,
Yeah.
I didn't do statistics on it, but on the other hand, I'm like it doesn't matter which region what I'm talking about. So US, India, Singapore, in the whole Europe, what we see that actually we have the best conversions on LinkedIn right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think there's right. I mean, it is finding that personal thing and referencing it. I mean, there are more and more executives, right, are all over LinkedIn. So you can find something, or even if they're super senior, you can find them in a TV interview, even, or a newspaper interview. Like just reference something. I think along those lines. I'm curious. One channel we haven't talked about yet is texting. Um, I'm curious, like in the US, I still feel as though people do not want to be prospected via text message. What is it like in Europe and elsewhere?
Europe, is the same, so it would be a bit weird, to just first of all because that means that actually you got to even sometimes through cold calls, it's still a bit weird, to call up direct lines of people, for instance, mobile lines. But so when it comes to text message, it would be definitely also weird. But for instance, we're also covering Latin America and Brazil, and what is really common there is WhatsApp. And personally, from tracking perspective, I don't like it because we cannot track WhatsApp. So either I'm forcing the sales reps that okay, so you have to just like log a call and put the WhatsApp message, but it's super manual, so it's not integrated. But on the other hand, they're showing me the messages, and I can see it as well that people for them it's just so much more convenient and simple to just to interact on WhatsApp, and you can directly call from WhatsApp as well. So if they're just chatting there, they can directly drive the conversation just to very quickly call. And this is what I see there, that it's very, very common. For instance, WhatsApp in Europe, if you really want to bring it to a business conversation and you're reaching out to someone through WhatsApp, that would be also weird. So I think it's really thriving in Latin America. and Brazil. Text message, I don't know, but yeah, in Europe, we also don't really use text message.
Got it. Well, questions are streaming in, so I'm going to hit a couple more. Celia asked whether or not video inside of emails is effective. So we actually studied a couple 100 million emails, and we found that it's very, very subtle how you should use video in email. It should be in not your first, but your second email touch, which is actually kind of a good thing, because if your first one bounces, then you didn't waste your time doing a video. But they sort of warm them up with your first email. And then the second thing that's super important is if you do a video as your second email, you need a few sentences, 2 or 3 sentences of introductory personalized text. If you do those things, your response rate actually it might even double, like it's a significant increase. So do it in the second email and after a few sentences. Someone asked about challenge. Sorry, go ahead. Were you going to respond to that, Kata?
No, I think it's very interesting about the videos, because I think like a couple of years ago, like I remember that when I was still selling, for instance, 3 years ago, videos were not that common. Obviously, it was already common, but like not as common as nowadays. And I think now, since it's really thriving, it's the same. So we still have to stand out. So it's not good just to send out like mass videos, because sometimes people, they don't personalize. Like I received many of them, and I think what I always said to the BDRs, and now I actually give them this kind of homework that every day, like every week, they should do some like free personalized videos to free handpicked accounts. But the thing is that if you don't personalize it, you give your face to it, and the video, like sending a video which is not personalized, it can even it can do more harm than good.
I totally agree. It relates to the question Dan just asked in the chat, which is like, what kind of video? And it's getting a video that is basically non-personalized, generic drop-in. I agree with you, is worse than getting the same email, because it consumes more of your time and energy. Plus, you're so much more disappointed. So yeah, I think if you are going to do a video, like truly personalize it, and I would put the same thing in there that you would, that you would in an email. So for example, let's say someone was prospecting me. Right, I do a podcast. They could listen to one podcast episode and say, "Hey, I really liked Kata. I'm actually going to have Kata on the podcast soon." So
Monday,
so they could say, "Hey, I was listening to your podcast with Kata, and you guys said this, right? Like, just do that. It's personalized in that way, or vice versa. As Kata, I heard you on the Hey Salespeople podcast, and blah 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 blah. Right? Like, so you just do that, right? Just be a human."
Self-authored content from back Holland.
back Holland all the way, all the way. Someone asked about Challenger Sale. Have you read the Challenger Sale book?
I'm reading it right now, because actually, as I mentioned before, I just touched base on a little bit that we building out a whole sales academy, not just for the BDRs, but also for the CAMs, key account managers, and also for the CSMs. So when actually like really negotiation and closing kick in. So I'm reading it right now, because actually I heard that it's really, really good, and it really changed the whole perspective of like how to sell, for instance, to multiple stakeholders, and yeah, I think it's definitely very important.
Yeah, it's a super popular book. I would boil it down to kind of this its framework is teach, tailor, and take control. That's their sort of three. That's the Challenger Sale in 3 words. I think a lot of people misinterpret the Challenger Sale that suggests that you should be aggressive when you're selling, and I don't think that like challenging your prospect is necessarily the right answer. I mean, so often books sell well when they take one side of a two-sided thing. So like challenger selling is also about bringing ideas to your prospect that would create value. I mean, I can say in my I'm off as much in buying mode as I am in selling mode. It's rather rare that someone's going to engage me on something that I don't already need. But if you prospect me when I need something, so like, if you're selling forecasting software right now, it's probably a great time because everyone's so lost in their forecast, right? So like if you're prospecting people on forecasting stuff right now, they're going to respond because it's top of mind for them. So I think that's one of the lessons for SDRs is like it's all about this kind of persistent engagement, so that
Exactly.
at the moment when someone's boss comes in and says, "Hey, help me with XYZ," and that email then lands on in their inbox, or they get the phone call or the LinkedIn touch or whatever it is, like that's the magic moment.
No, I absolutely agree with that, and I think that's the beauty of this outbound reach out, that basically you see it sometimes that people get back to you in 6 months.
Yeah.
The last outreach was 6 months ago, and they get back to you because actually the timing now is right. So I think it's that's the beauty of it, that all this hard work and all this persistency that you put in it, it pays off. It really pays off. Sooner or later, it will always pay off. And yeah, I think it's really beautiful.
Hey,
Yeah.
Zach.
Hey, Zach.
Hey, what's going on, Jeremy? How you doing?
Doing very well.
Good.
To see
Kata,
you.
nice to see you as well.
Very nice to see you.
Yeah, I actually do have a question, something that we've, interestingly kind of had spun up. I think everybody's got this, their pre-COVID and post-COVID story where magically they were doing something before COVID that somehow now seems super relevant. So we had been developing a program, and I was wondering if you guys within the outbound or outreach have seen success rates or seeing more companies moving toward this type of methodology. So offering things like, everybody does the trial. As Jeremy knows, we sell a very 9-month to 12-month sales cycle type of product. So it really takes a long time to sell anyway. And we recognize that one of the major friction points was that we make it so hard for people to experience the product. Obviously now with people being remote and maybe not being able to work in an industrial setting or in a laboratory, there's a very natural, I think, bifurcated dynamic, right? Where you have people that are not in the lab doing their job, but they are at home able to use your product, which typically they would use while at the job. So, I mean, obviously this is not specifically about our product, but I'd love to know this non-freemium products doing freemium-like trials while these people may not be in their normal place of business where they'd be using the tool. I'd love to get some perspective on that from you guys.
So our business model is not like that. So actually, we cannot do freemium products because basically we're matching photographers with like B2B businesses, for instance, Airbnb. I'm sorry, B2C, but so it's B2B our business model, but basically it's not a SaaS solution in a way. But actually, like right now, what we're doing is that we also putting more like emphasis on our AI solution to actually to kind of roll it out and try to test it on smaller clients that, for instance, don't have the money to have photographers, and actually they just want to retouch their product. And that's actually a good timing for that, because honestly it was on the roadmap, but we were not really pushing for it, and it's a nice timing to put more effort in it. But I cannot really talk about this freemium perspective at our company, but I know that, for instance, Aircall as well, like what they did is that they literally gave like 1 month for free, because obviously they wanted to actually tackle this growing need that you have in the market, that a lot of people obviously need to track their performance, their calls, it has to be recorded. And actually what they were doing, it was really nice that they offered 1 month for free. So these businesses and also small businesses, they could just test it out. So definitely, I think it's a great timing for that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where I was thinking a lot about this a few years back on sort of where you draw the line, and at least intellectually, right? You do free. It's all about cost of customer acquisition cost. So way, it was probably people too young to remember this, but like AOL was a big thing 20, 30 years ago, and they would litter the world with CDs, which was super expensive for people to load AOL onto their computers, right? But it was worth it for them. So I think it does come down to like, is there a big enough market? is there some degree of virality to the marketing? How much does it cost you to do that? You might give enterprise software freemium to a large enterprise for a period of time because you're trying to seed the market. So I don't think there's a perfect, no perfect answer to that. You got to do the math on customer acquisition costs, and especially if you're I don't know, public or private. I mean, people are burning cash, right? Probably at this point, so they need to be very careful on what their customer acquisition cost is. But yeah, you're definitely investing for the future.
Cool.
I
appreciate I think you made a great point around how can you make marketing viral in this freemium. I think that's a great something we've specifically been working on, is making whatever they're doing in that product is share out to other clients, so that at a minimum we're getting free marketing spend from those people using our product. So hey, more to build. I'm going to leave the session so that other people have some face time, but thanks guys. And I'm really enjoying the conference so far.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Kata, somebody asked, what's the best cold call you ever received?
I don't know, to be honest with you, because I think it's a culture of Europe that in France, for instance, it's not really common to do cold calls. So I think like the last cold call that I received, it was when I lived in Amsterdam, and it was more about like an investment broker, trying to sell me something. And I know that, I'm sorry, I could just say that like what is the worst cold call that I remember, because it was really bad, because it was this typical, like not even giving me any space, to brief, and basically he started directly pitching, and in 2 minutes he told me about everything, and I think it's like just the worst thing that you can do. It's quite obvious, because you just completely messing up these first 30 seconds where you'd like to build some rapport, and in general you just end up in the situation that the person in front of you just building up this wall, and they cannot even focus what's happening in these first 30 seconds, because they trying to figure out like, okay, so did I just get cold call, like who's calling me, and in the end I just ended up as well like, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. And that's it. But yeah, in Europe we don't really have this cold call culture that much.
I mean, I'll answer for me, and then someone asked our CEO this one time, so I'll answer for him too. So for me, the best cold calls is we're coming back to Beck Holland stuff over and over again. Like the best cold calls are personal. So I remember, I think I posted on, I don't know, I used forecasting earlier, so I'll continue to use that example. I posted something on forecasting on LinkedIn, and then I got a call, whatever, an hour later from someone who worked at one of the, forecasting shops like Cluster or Clary or Insight Squared or whatever it was, saying like, hey, I just saw you posted, that question on LinkedIn. I'd love to get, hook you up on a call with XYZ who can maybe help answer your question. Like, that's a brilliant one. The best cold call that our CEO ever received was somebody called him and said, hey, this is, Jeremey from XYZ. And our CEO, we sell to inside sales and SDRs and AEs and so on, but our CEO is polite, but he said, look, I'm just really not, it's not for me. And the SDR responded with calm confidence, are you sure you want to do that? And then just paused. And that was a super badass response. The person earned their meeting. So it actually ties back to, we'll get to Christopher in a second, but it ties back to the Challenger thing. The other thing about Challenger is that, and I've noticed this, I always like look around, who's the best rep in the company at the companies I worked for, and the best reps in the company, and this is very much a Challenger subtlety, is they're the ones who are not afraid to have difficult conversations and sort of gently, delicately nudge the client when it's necessary. I was listening to a call recording recently that one of our reps did, and at the end of the call, the rep asked, are we just the same sort of tone of voice, right? Which is that calm, confident tone of voice, which is, are we your vendor of choice? Or can I go to my manager and tell my manager that you've selected us as your vendor of choice? and then you just pause and let it out. So I think that confidence is incredibly powerful. Oh, Christopher, you had a question.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for putting this on.
Hey, Chris.
Really quickly, I know you guys touched on this kind of in the beginning. I kind of want to take a deeper dive where you said that there's a lot of conversations happening, right? People are still having those conversations. People are picking up the phone still, but it's not your SDRs, as I'm one myself, we're getting that not the right time objection more than ever right now. And Jeremy, I believe you were saying how, at least like you're making that lasting impression, like you want to make sure you're empathetic and going on. And then you also mentioned that consistent engagement. So kind of tying those two things together, I just had a great call with a prospect, and not right time, not too much pushback, try to deliver that pleasant experience. And then for that constant engagement, obviously you want to send them relevant, personalized information, but how does that, like, what are you seeing really resonates for that follow-up? And then like, how are you making sure like that ties back into the conversation that you had?
You want to start that one, Kata?
Yeah. So basically, the objection is that it's not the right time. So even though you had like a nice conversation and you feel that actually like the relationship is there, but on the other hand, the timing is not right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the situation, right?
Yeah, and then just kind of like the more niche of like today with like everything going on, where no one really knows when that right time might be because of all the uncertainty.
Exactly. So for instance, like just a quick background story. Before the COVID pandemic, I started training my BDRs actually to do more qualification and actually have a deeper discovery call. And so I was taking it very seriously that, okay, I was always going through the band, and I saw that, okay, so sometimes actually it was completely like it was not completed at all, or maybe half of the information was missing. So I was actually very strict on it. And now, obviously during these times, it's already very good if they manage to have a meeting, and maybe we don't know exactly the timing. Maybe we don't have like a perfect understanding of the budget, but on the other hand, they manage to gather some information that actually we store can help them to further qualify the lead later. And for instance, like when the right time is coming, we can already get back to them, even if they don't remember us maybe that much, because maybe the relationship was not that deep. But on the other hand, we can get back to a very personalized, like with sniper approach, value proposition directly in the beginning. So for me, at this point, like the most important part is to really, even if you have a lot of rejections and maybe you don't know whether it's the right time, but at least you keeping up this relationship and you getting back to them, circling back to them in 1 month, in few weeks. I think it's also very important to actually to read the news, what is relevant for the certain industries. Mm-hmm. So you really keep up to date and know exactly how it's working for them. So for instance, one of our biggest industries is real estate. So the BDRs are always checking the news, like how like the real estate is impacted and how it's evolving. And anytime when there is a change, at least they can circle back, they can reflect to that. So I think I know it's maybe not a perfect answer because there's no magic answer, but I think the most important part is really to keep up this relationship and try to get as many information as you can. So even if maybe, of course, our ultimate goal is to book a meeting and push it to an opportunity and close it, but now I think it's a bit shifted and it's already very good if you can have information that actually can help you to after further personalize when the time is right.
And Christopher, your question is similar to the one that Solange asked, and a number of people seconded. Is when people come to you and they say, or when people respond to you like, contact me when this is all over. I mean, there's a few approaches you can use, and you do what's comfortable and authentic for you, which is like some version of, are you sure you want to do that? I think is a reasonable thing, which is to say like, look, I know things are tough. You acknowledge it, right? I know things are tough. I think that if you hear me out, this is actually something that will help you, whatever, save cost, do this, do that, like generate revenue. and it's sort of you need it now more than ever, whatever your now more than ever statement is. I think that's the aggressive approach. The less aggressive approach is to say like, yeah, I totally understand. A lot of the folks that I've spoken to lately are in the same thing. Look, how about I just put like 30 minutes on your calendar for a month from now, and as that time approaches, you're perfectly welcome to push it further down the road, or cancel it, but just let's put it on there for now and see what things are like. And that I think it's hard for people to say no to that, especially maybe if you asked for something bigger before then, like you were asking for the meeting then. For them to say no, like it's so low friction and so low commitment for you just to stick something on their calendar a month from now that you give them permission to cancel. So I think that's a good way to do it. And then over the course of that month, right, maybe you drop them an email either once a week or once every maybe 2 weeks even, where you just say, hey, I know things are things may still be tough. Looking forward to talking to you on X date. In the interim, and this gets to someone else's question, is like, in the interim, like here's something that might be helpful to you. And what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't drop them just like your standard company marketing. I'm trying not to swear stuff. So I wouldn't drop. I would drop them something that like really has relevance and value to them, either in their industry or their role, or like not. I would not unless your company's stuff is like the super hottest content that is super actionable and helpful. I wouldn't use that. I would use something else just to be warm and build a relationship.
Yeah, definitely, Kata. I really liked your point on just kind of like almost like my team's been talking about a lot, those small wins, right? As an SDR, I want every call to end with a meeting booked, right? As you guys said, but I think that importance of looking at those small wins is kind of what driving a lot of SDRs. And Jeremy, to your point, yeah, like we've been doing that a lot. Almost that like I actually got this from one of my AEs who she said, I'm just putting this on here, just throwing this on your calendar as a reminder, like just a nice soft little touch where you still get that, you're still top of mind. And then like you said, like that, to make that even stickier, it's that market analysis, keeping up, as both you guys mentioned too, to ultimately have them go to that meeting. So appreciate both of your inputs on this, but I'll leave to give someone else the floor. Thanks, guys.
I think we might be being sent back to the main panel area, but maybe Kara can drop and let us know if we can do one more or not. She can put a little comment in the text, because we got a lot of other good questions up there.
Yeah, and the time already passed. I really didn't notice.
Okay, she says one last one. I don't know.
Who wants to be?
Yeah, we got a bunch in there. What do you like in there, Kata?
Let me see. I don't want it. There's too much pressure now for me to pick the last one.
Qualification, maybe.
Yeah.
For SDRs, I would recommend BANT over MEDPIC. I think MEDPIC is what AEs should be using, but and I would probably drop the B. So you're just looking for need. Do they have a use case that's relevant to what you sell? Timing is, are they likely to buy within the next 6 months or something like that? And then authority is like, are they a decision maker, or are they likely to be able to get you to a decision maker? I don't think they have to be a decision maker. Like, I think that's for SDRs. I think that's perfect.
I agree with you that in general, we're also using the bands, and I understand that actually sometimes the budget question is quite difficult to really tackle in the beginning, especially if your pricing is quite complicated as well. So it's not only it's not even necessary that that's relevant to bring it up in the beginning. So I agree with the bands. I think it's perfectly fine. For me, just one thing in terms of that sometimes I see on the BDRs that because of the band, they just want to collect this information. So, okay, they know that, okay, I have to have lead, I have to have this, I have to have that, and I have to put it in Salesforce so I can pass it on to the account executive or the CAM. So sometimes they forget about really understand the use case. So you don't necessarily have to dig, like you don't have to do like an account executive demo, or for instance like a Chemcore, how we call it at Meero. But I think in order to get the person hooked on your product and to really create real interest, so to avoid no-shows, for instance, in the future, to really make them interested, you have to understand the use case and you have to dig into it in order to pick a pain point that after you can be matched with one of your value proposition, because this is where you can really add value and you can really do the first part of selling. So I'm not saying that you have to do a perfect qualification call, but the idea is that you do a discovery. So this is why we call it also discovery, to try to understand the pain point. And I think sometimes what I see, I think it's a big problem that people have a lot of questions and they just want to go through these questions. So they just, like they interrogating in a way, they don't, sometimes the prospect talks a lot, but they don't jump on this topic and dig more into that, but they're already thinking about the next question. And then they sometimes it's super awkward because they don't react to it and then go to the next question. So for me,
Yeah, hugely great tip is when you I once learned, like, if you're in a gold mine and you're mining for gold and you hit a vein, stay there. Don't go hitting other rocks. So I think that's a perfect piece of advice to end with. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.